I'm sure a lot of you have heard the whole thing of recovery isn't linear, and I'm not going to be one of these other people explaining you why recovery isn't linear. We all know that when you're battling any form of mental illness, things get better, and then they get worse again, and then they get better. But in a way, no one ever prepares you anyway for when that does happen, when it does feel like you've gone back to square one, that it is normal and things are okay and you will bounce back from it quicker. So I thought I would just tell a short story about when that happened to me, which happened to me about 6 months ago perhaps. As you all know from this channel, I have OCD, I also have a bunch of other stuff, but the main thing that troubles me is OCD. And I'm quite lucky, although it's a bit of a double-edged sword, that I actually respond really well to medication. So it didn't take long for the medication to almost eliminate what was at the time very severe OCD, but I'd also get a lot of side effects. So it is easy to get quite complacent after a while, where you've got no OCD to deal with, but you've also got all the side effects. You're having trouble sleeping, you're having trouble eating, and you just remember how wonderful your body was before you were taking the medication. And because it had been very stable for a while, I thought perhaps it was about time I thought about coming off, and I spoke to my doctor. I don't think she thought it was a great idea, but she said, you could give it a try, just come off the medication. You're on a very low dose anyway, so it's probably not doing anything for you. So I decided to do that. I didn't just stop cold turkey, I did actually taper down until I was basically taking crumbs of medicine after 2 months. And for the first 2 months everything was fine, and it was wonderful to be able to sleep the way I used to sleep, to have my appetite for food back. But as you may imagine, after 2 months my symptoms did come back. And it was a bit of a slap in the face, to be honest. I had almost forgotten just how nasty it was to have the symptoms, and of course, because it was my own decision to come off the medication, I felt partly to blame for this coming back to me, almost as if I'd brought it upon myself. And I also once again felt the typical hopelessness. I didn't know how I was going to escape from this, and of course that's not entirely true. I'd already had experience going through this several times before, so I did know that all I had to do was I had to go to the doctor, explain the situation, and I explained my issue with side effects and whether it would be possible to find some kind of middle ground, because even when I was tapering off I seemed to be fine on a much lower dose. So eventually I was put on a very low dose of the medication. I'm on sort of half of the clinical dose, and it actually seems to do the job. I get the occasional breakthrough symptoms, but nothing as persistent as I did as I bounced back. So even though that was an instance of recovery not being perfectly linear, it was also a case where you've had the experience of being through this situation before, so you know how to deal with it better. You know that medication works for you, so even if therapy isn't ready, I say this with slight grudge because I've been on an NHS waiting list since I first sought treatment for OCD, and I'm still waiting because I was hoping I'd receive this treatment and not have to rely on medication. But we don't know what's going to happen with that. But the point is, if you know that some things work, even if they stop working or you change things, you know you can go back to that point where things worked. And even if you were working with CBT or doing some other form of treatment, you're still equipped with the skills to, I guess, maintain a certain situation and get out of a certain situation faster. So even though it's normal for symptoms to come back, sometimes you go through a rough patch, you do have this knowledge now. So it is possible to slowly change that path, even though it isn't quite the way you want it to be. And I think that's one of the most important lessons that recovery teaches you, and I think it's one that everyone has to learn by actually going through it. Things don't always go perfectly, and that's fine, and what doesn't kill you I guess does make you stronger. So yeah, that's gonna be my little short story. I promise that I should be making more in-depth and better edited videos, but as I kind of alluded in my previous video, I've been working quite hard on another set of videos which actually have nothing to do with mental health. They're going to be all about science and learning science, and ideally I'm trying to find a career to do with science when I finish my PhD, so that's why I'm directing a lot of my attention towards it. And simultaneously, sometimes it does get me down a bit to just talk about these topics. But I do have lots of ideas in mind, and I did read all of your comments, and they were all wonderful suggestions, so I'm going to be slowly but surely going through all of them and hopefully making a video for you that will help. But hopefully for now, this video will be useful to someone watching, and as always, I hope you're having a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one.